Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton. We're also joined today by a very special guest, Erin Macdonald, who is an astrophysicist and superstar. How are you?
Hi, thanks. It's really excited to be here.
Awesome. So today we're just going to talk with Erin Macdonald. It's going to be our another CNF episode. She's got a lot of really interesting things to say. She now works officially for Star Trek, which makes her, pretty much cooler than, it's awesome. So let's get started.
It is a mind blow.
Before we get anywhere in anything, we had a question that we had to ask you based on a previous episode that we had just recorded, a review episode. It was about Bajorans, and we were talking with our friend and your friend, Mr. Mohammed Noor.
Yes.
And we asked him a question. He said, that's an Erin question.
All right.
So, Sirach, do you remember what the question is? I know you wrote it down.
I did write it down. I didn't write it down verbatim, but I wrote down what the topic was, because it was about time.
Okay.
And the thing that I was asking Mohammed about was...
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the perception of time and why it would be something that, an alien would not even be able to comprehend.
Specifically, it was about the prophets, right?
Right.
Oh, I'm on it. Yeah, that's a great question. No wonder. Thanks a lot, Mohammed.
He's like, I'll pass that one off.
Yeah, pass that one off.
Awesome. So it has to do with the idea that the prophets experience time differently than everyone else, right?
Right.
Okay. So we're rolling up the sleeves first thing. I love it. So what we do, the best way to think about it, right? Deep Space Nine as a whole takes place. The whole concept is that it's next to a wormhole and that it is connecting the Alpha Quadrant and the Gamma Quadrant. So what is a wormhole? The best way to think about it is a lot of people have seen that trampoline analogy for space-time, for how our universe works, that if you put a bowling ball on the trampoline, that's like the sun or a planet. If you flick marbles around it, that'll orbit it, like planets orbit the sun or like moons orbit planets. And so that sort of flat fabric we call space-time. It's 4 dimensions, 3 dimensions in space, 1 dimension in time. And so this 4-dimensional fabric, it's hard to get our brains wrapped around visualizing that, but using this fabric, shrinking it down to a trampoline works. Now, think about our universe as, toilet paper is kind of on everyone's mind right now. So if you think about toilet paper, right, you crumple it up, you lay it out flat. Overall, it looks flat, but there might be parts where there are bumps or ridges, or you'd even have parts that are folded over each other. And it's laying flat, but they're folded over. If you want to normally travel those distances, you have to travel along that whole surface. But there might be these things called wormholes. Now, wormholes are theoretical. We've never detected them, but the math checks out. Like they could exist. And a wormhole would shortcut. It would basically punch a hole through those 2 points. So you imagine Alpha Quadrant, Gamma Quadrant, long distance, wormhole punches between those. What I love, and I've spent way too much time headcanoning with Deep Space Nine, is this idea that, all right, let's expand that a little bit. So you have the wormhole entrance on this side, the exit on this side. The wormhole's like a tunnel that's going in between the 2 of them. And if time is experienced in this dimension, the prophets experience time perpendicular to the rest of the universe. So they do experience, like, you can think of that as they're experiencing kind of all time at once, because they don't live in that same dimension that we do. That's a really fire hose of information, but that's the way I've always thought about it. And
that's really
and it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah. So, see, but my thinking is, as soon as you said they experience time perpendicularly, my first thought, trying to wrap my head around it, is how would that differ? Like, would that be the absence of time, or would that just be experiencing it in like some way that we can't conceive? Maybe.
I think it's probably more the latter, that it's just when all you know is this, and you have another species that experiences that same construct completely perpendicular to your knowledge, you have no reference plane for that, right? You can't, when we get into the mathematics of all this stuff, you normally project things down into your plane of understanding. But if you're like that, there's no way to project that. So phrasing it like they just experience it completely in a way that we can't wrap our heads around is the way to think about it. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did that work? Did that work for us, Sirach?
Yeah, that's usually my answer for everything. I just can't wrap my head around it.
That's okay. I hope it made sense for a fleeting second. That's all I ask.
And you know what? One of the things you said that was interesting to me was that you said they're experiencing it all at once, and I just that kind of gave me a mind melt.
Right.
Trying to conceptualize that, because we always think of time as being this linear, forward moving thing,
right?
And so, I mean, even like the idea of time travel doesn't seem possible in reverse, more so as it is in going forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. See, and Sirach, by the way, you, without knowing it, you quoted Q right there when you talked about our linear way of thinking.
Solid.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
And now you just quoted Odo. So, but I do want to rewind a little bit and kind of start from the beginning now that we
got
smarter.
Now
all
we got
of a
that
sudden.
out of the way.
Yeah, now I'm smarter and I don't know what to do with this now.
Yeah.
But Erin, when did you start becoming a Star Trek fan? When did it first hit you?
I was a little bit late for me. I got some exposure to Star Trek through, my uncle and my childhood friend growing up, but I never necessarily had it in the house. I was never exposed to it that much. And then when I went to college was kind of when I first started watching Star Trek, because there's a big intersection with physicists and Star Trek fans. And so a lot of my colleagues were big Star Trek fans and had chosen to go into that field because of that. And so we would, the physics drinking parties would be watching an episode of Next Generation, and every, tuck and every engage would be a drink. And that was my first exposure. But I really liked it and I enjoyed the story. So I started, this was the subscription by mail Netflix, getting the DVDs in the mail, started getting Star Trek and started watching it myself. But for me, really, it was the 2009 film when that came out, the first Kelvin timeline film, because that film came out the night we all graduated. So we graduated, we all had our dinner celebration with family and everything, and then we all went to the midnight showing of this film. Wow. And that was my first exposure to kind of in-person fandom. I hadn't really done conventions before. My uncle had taken me to Comic-Con back when it was, a few people and their tables down in San Diego selling comics. And, but I'd never experienced that sort of convention fan feel. And I was hooked. I was like, oh, these are my people. This I like. This I can get behind. And it becomes a family really, really quickly. And so from there, I moved away for graduate school. I moved overseas by myself. I didn't know anyone.
Where'd you go?
In Scotland, the University of Glasgow.
Wow.
It was a great place to go. Yeah. It was awesome. Yeah. But
so the drinking parties didn't stop there, I'm assuming.
Oh no. Oh no, not at all. And actually it was through Star Trek that I met some of my closest friends, because I was at that point consuming all of it and pounding my way through all these series. And so I met a lot of other people who were Star Trek fans, and that was sort of our entree to our friendship. That was the way that I was meeting friends and getting together and watching episodes and drinking and so it became very, very near. I fell hard, I fell fast, but you're never too late to become a Star Trek fan.
Wow.
When you started going back, did you watch them in order, or how did you go back and start watching?
Kind of bits and pieces. I went back and started watching before I moved, I went back and watched Next Gen. I tried to watch it in order, and then all my friends were like, no, like start with season 4, and then I get the whole list of ones that I need to start with. I picked up some, original, like classic original series episodes. So I was more dabbling through, but then, when I moved, that's when I kind of, recommended Deep Space Nine and Voyager. And especially at that time, Voyager really struck me because it's a woman captain and they're stuck on the other side of the galaxy. And at that time I was really homesick and, trying to find my way here. And so it just really resonated with me. And yeah, so I watched Deep Space Nine and Voyager just sort of beginning to end, but the rest I dabbled here and eventually filled in all the gaps.
Is Voyager your favorite?
Janeway's my captain, but Deep Space Nine is my favorite series for sure. I love the storytelling. Right? Yeah. I love the storytelling, and I love the characters and the way that you have this different environment compared to the rest of the series, and it's a different way of telling stories. It's a different environment that I really like.
I wanted to ask you, and I kind of got an idea of this right before we hit record, but you've met our good buddy, Mr. Aron Eisenberg in the past, right? Can you tell us about any of that?
Yeah, it's really, I have a lot of sweet memories with him. We weren't, super close, but when you do the convention circuit, you run into the same people over and over again at these conventions. Right. And I had started going to give science talks. I had left academia. I was missing teaching. I didn't miss the research side of it, but the teaching was what I missed. And so I started giving talks on science behind science fiction. And at Dragon Con, that was kind of where I got my start because they had really hard science and space tracks. And then I started branching out into the science fiction side. But I was sort of a regular at Dragon Con and was just wandering through the tables. And Erin was sitting there and just, it's kind of quiet and no one's around. So we just started chatting. He saw I had a guest badge. So he asked why, he's like, so what do you do? And I explained to him, and he was thrilled by that. He loved the idea that a scientist would come and use science fiction to teach. And he just, from then on, anytime I saw him at a convention, he was always like, you're the real celebrity. You need to be back here. And at one time I was catching up with him and Melissa at Star Trek Las Vegas. And we were, again, sort of quiet in this hall, and we're just chatting, and some people came up and wanted to chat. And so I kind of politely, step aside, and they were like, no, we want a picture with you. And Erin was like, damn right you do. She's the celebrity. Like, she's doing good work here. And so, we never really got to socialize outside of conventions, but it was always a pleasure seeing him. And the fact that we had Erin, and my partner's name is Erin. So it was the three Erins.
Erin cubed, huh?
Wreaking havoc. Yeah, it was great.
Sirach, when she's telling this story, can't you totally picture Erin that
saying exactly,
and he would have absolutely loved having her on the show, right? I mean, we know.
Yeah, and I can see him saying what he said, which is, "You want a picture with her? She's the real deal around here. I'm just an actor. She knows everything."
It was really sweet.
I can see him saying that,
totally.
And he's definitely that type of person. He's so welcoming and embracive, and has a respect for people that are doing what you're doing.
Yeah, he really was the first person for me too, from the sort of actor side of Star Trek, that made me feel like part of the family. Because I knew him at Dragon Con, that was before I had really been involved in Star Trek. And then going to Star Trek Las Vegas, he was a friendly face for me and kind of introduced me to a lot of other people and just kind of made me feel very welcome. And I think that just, is 100% his personality.
That's definitely a consistent story that we hear, which is either Erin was the first Star Trek celebrity that, reached out and said hello or that I got to know, or Erin was the familiar face that would always say hi and introduce me to people. He was always like that. Like, he was always like, you're here, you're part of the family. Let me introduce you to this person. And he was always so happy to meet new people. And like, as Sirach said, you very much respected what people like you do, Erin.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he said something to that effect to you more than once.
Yeah, he did. It really means a lot. Really means a lot.
The other aspect of what you said reminded me of how inviting he is. Many times I've seen Erin, for example, sitting at his table and people are walking by, and he would basically invite them to come talk to him. Like, don't take a picture from way over there. Come and take a closer picture and talk to me for a little bit. And
totally.
He was always that kind of a person, like, hey, don't just stand there and point at me. Come over here and talk.
Yeah.
And I want to get to know who you are and tell me who you are and what you do. he was that kind of a person. He was really welcoming. You know, some people you feel like, okay, should I go over there? Should I not? You know, are they going to talk to me? Are they not? You know, uh, but Aaron was like the guy who was like, hey, come over here. Come on,
Yeah.
move up closer. Guys, you're too far away. You know?
Yeah.
So
What are you doing? What did you eat today? Come chat. Keep me
Let's
company.
have
lunch. Yeah, let's talk about it. We're going to go eat. You want to go eat?
Yeah.
But you said something about the science behind science fiction, which I thought was a really great concept for you to be talking about at conventions. What was the, what was the lesson plan, or what was the thing that you had to develop in order to have a talk?
Yeah, like I said, Dragon Con was kind of how I got my start doing this stuff, just because of the way that they're structured. And for people who aren't aware, most people have probably heard of Dragon Con at least, but they set up these tracks for the whole weekend. So it's thousands of hours of programming if you add it up. But they have a space room and they have a science room, and they have these track leads who program the entire track for the whole weekend. And so a lot of times, as opposed to other conventions, as a panelist or a speaker, I have to go to them with ideas. Dragon Con, you have the track leaders who see your resume and they reach out to you and say, hey, can you give a talk on this, or can you jump on a panel about this? And so I had been giving very kind of strict space science talks in the space track on my research, on my field, and that was the type of content they were looking for. But then I think my second year, the video game track reached out and they were like, can you do a panel on the science behind Mass Effect? And I was
no way. That's
huge.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm a huge I got my Commander Shepard hoodie on. I'm a huge Mass Effect fan. So I jumped on that and it was insanely popular. It's actually how I met Professor Mohammed Noor, was through a colleague, Eric. Eric and I met for the first time giving that panel. And just the popularity and the demographics and the interest in the people was what really spoke to me. And so this idea that the audience was filled with people who loved science fiction, loved these stories, and had that interest in science, but never had really gone in. I hear all the time from people who are like, hey, I think space science is really cool. I try to read like space news. I don't get 90% of it. I stopped taking science classes because math sucks. And I hear that all the time. But those are the people that I kind of cater my talks to. And so from the science of Mass Effect, Eric and I started giving those talks around the country. And I mean, it was insane. They put us in a room that would hold like 80 people, and we'd have to turn away like 200 or 300 people from the room who wanted to hear this.
Wow.
And so that was where I was like, okay, this is my zone. And I really pushed just myself writing these solo talks of, all right, like, let's do artificial gravity and faster than light travel. That's tangentially related to my research. So I'm going to dig into some sci-fi, put like a 45-minute solo lecture together where I will just teach people, like I just did, how space-time works and how gravity works, and using science fiction as that anchor point, and just building up those talks over the years it's really fun. I love doing it.
And that brings us to present day, which is you've had some big news recently. By the way, we've got about 5 minutes left. This is what we'd love to know about you. This is kind of like what we were talking about a little bit earlier, but you now are an employee of Star Trek. Number one, is that the coolest thing ever? And number two, tell us about that.
Yeah. It is the coolest thing ever. I think it occasionally flashes through your mind at random times where you're like, oh, I work on Star Trek. Like, that's a thing. That's
officially.
A thing. Yes. Yeah. It's a weird thing to just be like, oh, that Star Trek. Even people who do not care about science fiction know Star Trek. And so that personally just means a lot. And being a science consultant has always been a dream job for me, because I love, as we've been talking about, marrying science with the entertainment industry. I've always been that sort of left brain, right brain person. I've always loved the entertainment industry and storytelling. And so being able to bring those two together is fantastic. As I'm sure you know as well, the entertainment industry can sometimes be a long, slow process and where you have to sit on things for a while and then they fall through or then they come through and then you're like finally able to talk about stuff and you're like, this is old news to me. It doesn't all just happen one day with fanfare, but being able to publicly say it has been brilliant. And I'm so grateful to the fan base of Star Trek because I think they've been very welcoming and excited for me, which feels really good. You never know how sort of these long-lasting fans are, fandoms are going to react to a newcomer.
They're so supportive, aren't they?
Yeah, it really has been.
Now, was it the work that you did doing these science behind science fiction talks that kind of got you into this role, or was it something completely unrelated?
No, almost exactly that. It's been many years. I started giving these talks almost 10 years ago. And over the years, I was starting to meet people in the entertainment industry through doing these conventions. So it was like, oh, hey, that's cool. My buddy's working on a screenplay. Like, do you mind looking at that? So I started doing this consulting and I freaking love it. I'm like, dream job. I moved out to LA 3 years ago. And again, through all these people that I had met, just, started talking and it, that's how it happens out here. And, but Star Trek though, I've always been involved. I've been involved with Star Trek longer than I've been an official consultant in the sense that they brought me on to give these science talks at their conventions and on the cruise before I was working as a consultant. So they saw the fan base resonate with that type of content. And then, we've made this position for me to help behind the scenes as well as in front of the scenes with the fans, which is great.
So what does that look like? Do they give you a call? Do they give you an email? Do they send you a piece of script? What do they say when they're looking for consultation?
All of the above. I mean, a lot of it is just saying that I am available to the shows. They have 5 shows in development right now and at various stages. Some are animated, some are live action. All of those take different type, have different production schedules. And so I'm just available if they want to use me. So they know they have this resource that the franchise has made available to them. Sometimes it's helping break story. I mean, some of the shows I've sat in the writer's room with them and worked through story and answered questions.
Pretty cool.
Which is super fun. Other times it's just, hey, read the script along with the rest of the production, team, the higher production team. Let us know if you see anything that makes you throw up in your mouth.
Little red flags, little scientific red flags.
Oh no. And there's been a couple of those, which is, it's fine. And that's part of the process. That's why they do this review. And it just kind of lets everyone else rest easy where they can say, all right, well, at least we have a scientist who is a fan reading the script before it's too late. And, but again, not all the shows are necessarily using me, and it is all of the above. It's phone calls, emails, just production, distribution, all of that. And it's awesome. But sitting in the writer's room is probably the most fun for me.
Gotta be. So we're just about out of time here. We have to run. But Erin, thank you so much for joining us. And we definitely hope to see you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
I have way more questions. I think
know.
This was way too short of a segment. Sorry.
Can you knock them out in like
30
seconds?
No, I can't.
Just do it.
But I do have a question that I think Erin would ask the late great Aron Eisenberg.
Right. Yeah.
And that would be if you had anything to do with these time crystals that he really.
Would Erin ask that, or would Sirach Lofton ask that question?
I would ask him with Erin present.
Right. I had nothing to do with time crystals, but Ken Mitchell, who played Tanavik in that Discovery episode, loves giving me a hard time about time crystals.
All right, good. At least you're getting a proper hard timing. And the other thing I wanted to ask you was, are people giving you like hard times about stuff like, oh, Erin, how come you didn't catch that, or are you responsible for this, that, or the other?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think especially just because none of the stuff I've worked on has aired yet, but there's the association. So yeah, I do get a lot of people asking me if I have worked on stuff. Nothing I've worked on has aired, so I'm kind of bracing for the storm with that. But it's such a hard thing, though. It's hard to convey to people the balance of science versus story. And sometimes you do just have to step back and say, look, all right, just don't try to explain it too much. And that's fine. If that's the story you want to tell, I respect that. You're the writers, you know, and we make it work, and we just make sure nothing wrong is said. I think that's really the big part of the job. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks again. Sorry we didn't have enough time.
I mean, with so much stuff, you know, I loved what you said, Janeway's my captain, and you know, I just like the whole perspective that you have, and we look forward to seeing more of you.
Right. And we definitely would have more time if we, you know, perceived it perpendicularly, but we don't. Right. That's what we do. We bring it all.
We're on
back.
the Kelvin. We're still on Kelvin.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no time to talk about the timeline. There's another quote for us.
Love it.
Troy. Yeah, but thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We love the detail in your answers, and it's so obvious and clear why you were chosen to work on Star Trek because of that, because your enthusiasm coupled with your knowledge. And
thank you.
The way you're able to explain yourself to those of us that do not have PhDs in science or whatever.
Plus, I'd love to have you back and ask you about watching shows that you did work on after they air. So so you have that perspective of, you know, what it feels like, all warm inside,
fresh out of the oven.
Yeah, to see your work come alive, you know.
Yeah, you have an evil glint, like you know how this feels.
Yeah, you're gonna.
Well, Jake's a writer.
Thanks. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm excited, and I'd love to be back. So thank you again, guys. I really appreciate it.
Sounds awesome. Definitely. So thank you all very much for joining us. Check out Erin Macdonald at
Dr. Erin Mac, mostly on Twitter. And my website is draronmac.com, where you can find all my other stuff.
Easy and awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us. And always remember the 7th rule.